National Adaptation Plans, NAPS. I'm Thomas Ribermark. I'm Director of Swedish Waterhouse at CB and Chair of the Water for Climate Pavilion, and will be your moderator at this session today. So, starting off, I would like to introduce our esteemed panelists. So, please take your seats in time. Emmanuel Esoto, please. You're the Manager of Global Cooperation for ASTM International. Kurt Holle, if you take the seat on the other side. WWF Peru Country Director. And I'm very happy to see Sakaya Kazam, President of Environment Canada and Chair of the ISO TC 207 on Environmental Management. And not least but not last, Rosario Uria, Standardization Director for the Instituto Nacional de Calidad in Peru. Welcome all panelists, and it's a pleasure to have you. I will begin with asking Emmanuel to give us a little bit of an introduction or setting the scenes, and then we will move into presentations.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. Hello? Hello? Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Well, as all we know, water security is increasingly challenged by climate change. Extreme weather events, floods, droughts, heat waves, threaten both urban and rural water infrastructure, impacting communities, ecosystems, and economies. Today, we are here to talk about water resilience and mitigation, and how to advance SDG 6 on water and sanitation, SDG 13 on climate change, and SDG 17 on partnership. So we have a great panel here that we're going to be talking and discussing about the tools and research we have in these areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. We will now move into straight into the presentations across topics and industries. So I will actually start with you, since you hold the microphone. I will continue, and then we do it easier on the other way in turns. So, Emmanuel, based on you, on what you just said and what your expertise is, you will now please take the reins to give us an overview of applying standards for climate resilient water resources, please.
Absolutely. Well, for those that do not know ASTM International, we are a globally international standards development organization. We work developing and delivering consensus-based and science solutions through standards that are help for government, communities, and utilities to help manage and plan for resiliency on water systems. All of them are supporting and providing measurements to and deliver impact in water resilience as well. And as we were mentioning before, they are impacting water and climate action as well. ASTM International developed its standard thanks to the contribution of 34,000 volunteers, scientific and business professionals from around the world. We have representatives from 157 countries in the technical committees. And this model of partnership make the highlight, because it makes it easy for the technical people and the expert to come together when they have a new research or update that they can apply and they want to put it into a standard. They come together, they make the decisions through the rules and regulations of the committee, and that's how we advance in the solutions. At ASTM International, we are always proud to say that we welcome everyone to our table. We collaborate very openly, and we serve globally and make positive, lasting impact through people's life. Well, talking about welcoming everyone to the table, actually we have a QR code, because ASTM offer Memorandum of Understanding membership, which are for the, we have been discussing here at COP the importance of listening the community, listening or welcoming the indigenous peoples to the table, hearing from their solutions. So we want to hear you if you think you have or you want to contribute to climate solutions, particularly in water, if you are interested, we welcome you to our table. We can have these conversations, and we will see if the technical committee consider that the application you are promoting could be standardized or part of one of the standards that we already have. Talking about standards, ASTM has over 13,000 standards, and 600 of them are water-related standards, spanning from availability, quality, and use across 32 committees. These standards are the backbone of global plumbing codes and infrastructure systems that ensures safe, reliable, and climate resilient water solutions. Key ASTM committees working on water, we have D19 on water to advance management, quality, and testing solutions. We also have the committee F17 on plastic piping systems, committee C13 on concrete piping, E60 on sustainability, and committee or subcommittee E5007 on climate and community. To tell you a little bit more about the key standards that we use on water resiliency, we have the ASTM E3136 Standard Guide for Climate Resiliency in Water Resources, ASTM C1602 that allow reuse and recycling of mixing water in concrete, ASTM 2637 on water conservation, and finally E2728 on storm water management. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. It's impressive with just knowing that you have 34,000 volunteers to be part of this partnership. It's fantastic. So congratulations. Moving over to you, Kurt. You're looking at using energy systems planning to meet climate, water, and sustainable development goals. Could you please elaborate? And I think we have a slide for you as well. Please.
Thank you. WWF has been working in the Amazon in the freshwater scope for several years. And in the Amazon, the Science Panel for the Amazon launched a report in 2021 where they talked a lot about the tipping point and how close we were to the tipping point, and how actually the Amazon is subject to many different tipping points depending on the place where you are on the tipping point, and freshwater was one of the thresholds for this tipping point. No, so for example, there are places in the Amazon where the dry season has already expanded by 2 or 3 weeks. There are places in the Amazon where the rainfall has decreased below the level of a tropical rainforest to under 2,000 millimeters, and so on. No? So freshwater is essential to the Amazon ecosystem. We've been looking at what rivers in the Amazon are free-flowing and which are not free-flowing anymore. And in that context, it's really important to keep the Amazon free of new hydroelectric power projects. No? So we looked at that in different countries of the Amazon, including Peru. And in Peru, the government has a commitment for 40%. The NDC for Peru is 40% reduction in its emissions, which can be accomplished by changing the energy system of Peru, which could include hydro. No, it could include hydro. It could include hydro in different parts of the country, including the Amazon. No, and several hydropower plants were included in this projection from the Peruvian government. Hydro has a huge impact on biodiversity, especially freshwater biodiversity. It has a huge impact on the floodplain forests of the Amazon, so also terrestrial biodiversity. And Peru also has commitments towards biodiversity that are manifested in the commitments to the biodiversity COP. No. So what we did was look at that that plan, the hydro plan for Peru, is specifically for the Amazon, and we analyzed it against different energy options that could be used to replace those hydro plants. And we did that with the same consultancy firm from Brazil, a consultancy firm called PSR, that the IDB had used to do the analysis for the hydro projections and for the hydroelectric power plant projections in the first place. No? And what we found is that by replacing, by using other energy commitments under a system scale planning scenario, we could replace the hydro with solar and energy fully with an increase in the cost of about 5%, a little bit under 5%, no? And we could even replace small hydro plants additional to the ones in the Amazon, so no hydro in the Amazon, and then additionally replace some small hydro in other parts of the country for a cost of a little bit above 5%, no? And if there's a bar graph somewhere in the presentation, but the differences were a little bit under and a little bit over 5%. So this is something we did with the Ministry of Energy, no? With the technical staff of the Ministry of Energy. So essentially, what we're proving through the system is, first of all, the value of system scale planning, no? Of using all the energy capacity of the Peruvian landscapes, no? And secondly, we're proving that, or we think we can cover the necessities of energy in Peru without hydro in the Amazon at a fraction of the additional cost, no? At a marginal additional cost. An important partner in this has been the Nature Conservancy. WWF and the Nature Conservancy have been working on this with the Ministry of Energy. So thank you, Thomas. That's my message.
A very strong and good one. Thank you for that, Kurt. And we will stay in Peru. So I will thank you, Kurt. And so we will hear from you, Rosario, on adaptation and mitigation measures within Peru's national determinative contributions, the NDCs. Please.
Thank you, Thomas. First of all, I would like to thank for inviting me to this session. I came from Peru. My name is Rosario Uría. I work in a national standard body, INACAL. INACAL is full member of ISO and IC and has an MOU with ASTM. I mention that because all my examples that we contribute to the NDC and NAP in my country are supported by ISO standard. As you can see in the screen, I put in the picture the glacier of Peru. We have a mountain of glaciers, but it is reduced each year. It's very important to mention because we are a country that has 68% of the glaciers, tropical glaciers in the world. So this is not affecting only Peru, it's only affecting all the Americas region. It is very important. So this is affected by the climate change, and this affected not only for the water consumers, also affect in Peru to the generate electricity, because 37% of the energy electric is generated by hydroelectrical power centrals. So it is important. Also, if we modify by the climate change and reduce the glacier, we modify the ecosystems. And Peru is a biodiversity country, so it is very important for us. This is the reason that we need, as a national standard body, support all the commitments of Peru has with the NDC and NAP plans. And we support, as a national standard body, with through the ISO and ASTM standards in this framework of the water. I would like to mention some cases and some experience that we have. We established, for example, in the terms of the new commitment of Peru for this year, we approved a new document, a new commitment to 2035. We need to establish, for example, a circular economy in the roadmap of water, in the water and sanitation sector. this implies that in the water activities, we need to promote the circular economy in, for example, wastewater. This is very important. All the providers of services in sanitation need to apply circular economy in 2035. We are contribution in a legal framework using ISO standard of circular economy. This is very important for my country. Also next year, Peru will be the host of the plenary of Circular Economy Committee, so it is very important. Another point that is relevant is through circular economy, we need to use new alternatives to generate energy from the wastewater biomass. So we are working in that using also IEC, in this case, standard. Another point that is important is that how we can save the use of the water to preserve and to save the water. We have legal metrology to control the meters in water for consumer meters, with agro-industrial meters, with water underground. This is very important. This is in the framework or legal framework in Peru, and it is supported by INACAL also with a standard of ISO and OIML standard. So this is important to say. Another point that I would like to highlight is the use of the scheme of GHG emission with ISO has with a family standard of 14064 part 1 and part 2. So the authority of the environmental in Peru recognize these schemes. And it is very important for us. We use ISO standard for this work, and also the accreditation scheme for accreditation bodies to need to apply the monitoring and verification schemes to demonstrate that we are reducing the GHG emission. Another point that is relevant is to talk about the use of irrigation with new technologies in the framework of agriculture. This is another point that we are promote the use of 12 ISO standard in a sector of agriculture. So another point is the use of risk analysis in base of 31,000 ISO standard risk management for climate change. So this is very important for us. I would like to highlight the importance of ISO standard and also ASTM, for example, in the control of different standard of quality in the framework of environmental. We need to apply a very robust standard through methodology to detect contaminants in biological, chemist, and physical standard, and it is supported by STM standard and ISO standard also. So in short words, I would like to emphasize that national standard body supports the national policy in NDC and APEs with authority. This is important to mention that it's not only to have the intention of to promote or to move forward with the action or measures to climate change. It is important to introduce the standard in the legal framework, because if it's mandatory, we move forward to work in the face to climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosario. That was for your very distinct message on the need for standards and how you work on implementing them. And also congratulations on becoming the circular economy plenary lead next year. So congratulations on that. So now that we've heard the sum of our panelists, I would like to move into a discussion with you. And as we are yet to hear from Sakaya, I would like to turn to you first. So as the chair of one of ISO's leading committees in climate standards, the TC 207 on environmental management, how effective are current tools for translating climate goals into practical, measurable actions for water management and resilience? Please, Sakaya.
Thanks, Thomas. I think there's 2 or 3 things that I would mention specifically. So one is we absolutely do have tools that provide guidance on how do you embed consideration of water into an environmental management system and how do you do a water footprint. And it includes quality considerations as well as quantity considerations, and how do you develop indicators to make sure that you're managing the impacts effectively, but you have the evidence base in order to make sure your objectives are being upheld. So that's one dimension. The second dimension that I think is really important when we talk about the confluence of water and climate change is climate vulnerability and risk assessment. So we have standards related to adaptation to climate change, and especially when we don't have infinite amounts of money, we need to make sure our money is going into the most effective and the most efficient solutions. And the way you do that is by understanding your risks associated with water systems. Where is the best place to make the investments in order to enhance your adaptation and get the best value for your money and the best outcomes for your population that you're dealing with. So that's the second dimension, is in being able to pinpoint precisely where should your investments go to, and you get that from the adaptation to climate change standards that ISO produce. The third element, we don't often talk about it, but as a practitioner, is quality management. So ISO is very well known for our quality management system standards, the ISO 9001. And the reason why I think this is so important is because once the money has moved and we've got projects that are ready for execution, we need to make sure that those projects are delivered very effectively. So a couple of years ago, I had worked on a water infrastructure, drinking water treatment plant in Syria. And that particular project that we were implementing, it had a sour water. The water had H2S in it, and we needed to be able to treat it so that the population could drink that water. Because of the crisis that there was created by the war, there were cities that didn't have drinking water supply. So this was funded by the government of Canada as a humanitarian crisis project. And what was interesting for us to see is that there were other investments made in the exact same location that didn't pay enough attention to the risks associated with that project. And because of the corrosion, you had investments that went into the country that have been effectively wasted because you can't run those plants because of how corroded they've been. So being able to track your risks and to make sure that what you're purchasing is actually what you get and that you're tracking quality all the way through is incredibly important, because we don't have funds to waste at this particular junction in time. So when people ask me what's the biggest challenge to climate change right now in implementation, I actually think it's capital efficiency, that we don't have money to waste, and I think that's where standards provide a robust framework for us to make sure we're being efficient with the money that we spend.
Thank you so much, Sakai. I was trying to take notes here because I think you said some really interesting and very distinct things. Also for bringing in the financial aspects and how we maximize the limited resources, financial resources we have, and also the population, the perspective of populations, not only for access but also for supply and how we measure that. So thank you for bringing that in. I would, before we go to the next, would any of you in the panel like to make a short comment on what Sakaya just said?
I think it's very important that you mentioned, because if we have a strong data, strong tools based in ISO or international standard, we can, as developing countries, for example, that we need funding for different projects that we need to apply in different aspects, renewable energies, new technologies, to face the climate change. We need to have a very robust studies, very robust data that we can show to the funding, to get funding. So it is very important. I will highlight that.
Thank you so much, Rosario. Kurt, in your work in Peru, WWF, as the country director, how can, from your perspective, scientific research and particularly in areas of hydropower and freshwater systems inform the development of informed decisions and plans, both climate resilience and sustainable water use?
Yeah, thank you for that. First of all, I'd like to use a question on science to refer to, again, I mentioned it in my brief presentation, but the work of the Science Panel for the Amazon. That is really 100 scientists and Amazon experts of all kinds working together to understand what is going on in the Amazon based on evidence. No? And their work is extremely diverse. So it has to do, I mentioned the tipping point and forests and deforestation. They talk about connectivity in water, they talk about connectivity in land, they talk about connectivity in culture, they talk about connectivity of people, they talk about positive tipping points, they talk that every one or they talk about restoration. So every 1 or 2 years they come up with incredible briefs on what they're looking at for those years. No, so science, for example, capital efficiency, as Sakaya mentioned. Look at what goes on in the Amazon in Peru, where we have the Amazonian departments of Peru have some of the highest and increasing rates of anemia in children in an ecosystem that has the largest supply of fresh water in the world, that has that should have fish stock, no, in volume, no, and yet the kids in that part of the country are growing with anemia, essentially for at least 2 reasons, probably more. But one of them is lack of access to quality water. So they have a lot of stomach problems, no? And the solution that is sometimes provided is diet supplements coming in from the coast, from the urban areas, no? As opposed to the recovery of the ecosystem, no? Or set up a better healthcare system on site, a better clinic on site when you should be looking at the freshwater supply, no? So capital efficiency, same with the fish stock, no? There used to be fish in every in quantity in those rivers. Now in some of those rivers there is no fish, and if there is, it's uneatable because it's polluted from mercury and other effects of artisanal gold mining. So science can guide the efficient allocation of capital in places like the Amazon, no? And there are a lot of organizations like us, like PNC, and like the Science Panel for the Amazon that are trying to provide those guidelines.
Thank you, Kurt. And then bringing those quite serious aspects in, would any of you in the panel like to comment on Kurt's shortly before we move on?
I think one thing that we need to be really conscious of is the economic decision making that needs to be paired with science. So often because of the way that policymakers make their decisions, they have multiple pathways that they can take, but they're always concerned about which one is the best pathway. So being able to understand the science, but then translate that understanding of science into an economic number, as much as we hate it, that's the way decisions get made. And I think being able to do that pairing is critical to be able to prioritize funds. So I completely agree with what my colleague said, but emphasize that pairing with the economic side, because that's ultimately how decisions get made. They get made on the basis of money.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Just to add a little bit on what Kaya said, it is where it comes the importance of partnership or working together. When you put together not only the decision makers, but also you put users, producers, consumers, you put together government, academia, and the community itself that is being affected and that are the most interested in finding the solution, is where you put all these elements together. And when you make a decision, for example, for deciding on one standard that is going to be effective, but also that will deliver the reliable results it is promising as well. But also is applicable in terms of economics as well, because it's going to provide the benefit that the we are looking at the moment when we are deciding on that, either a new item, a new standard, or updating an existing one. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. And perhaps we can now go over to Rosario. It would be interesting to garner your experience from Peru, specifically on how important effective on how effective collaboration is across governments and private sector and standardization bodies in order to implement the NDCs and the NAPs. Please.
Thank you. Hello. Yes, since the experience of Peru, I would like to comment that the contribution or the partnership with with international organization as ISO, ASTM, IEC, provide to the national standard bodies, in this case my national standard body from Peru, a very good tools of information to support not only policymakers, to support, this is a solution for the multi-actor stakeholder. There are many stakeholders that need to contribute to this action to face the climate change. So for us, it's very important first, the establishment of standards from international organization to adopt as national Peruvian technical standard is very important because we provide the best practice in the world for to apply and for to move forward to the action and the measures in face to climate change. This is the first one, to have a very tools instrument, to have a very tools instrument based in standard. The second one is to support policymakers in the framework, in the legal framework, because the policymakers, when they commitment or they establish the commitment to apply NDC on AAP, it's only an intention. It's important that they introduce in the legal framework different action, because this is a very best way to move forward in our commitment. So if we collaborate with the policymaker to introduce the technical Peruvian standard based in ISO standard or ASTM or IEC, we contribute with a very important standard and very standard based in consensus. The third thing that I want to highlight is that this partnership provides new technologies. It's a transfer of knowledge. It is very important. Of course, the capability for to implement. But it is very important that the international standard give the best information that are working in the world. This is the importance of all the national standard body need to participate very actively at the international level. Finally, it's important to highlight that if the policymaker need to prepare its reports for to demonstrate or to show that they are move forward as a country with the commitments, it is very important that this report based in data that is reliable. And international standard gives us this possibility. So as national standard body, we have the commitment to support all the stakeholders, principal the policymaker, using international standard.
Thank you, Rosario. And I give you in the panel a possibility to reflect also on that. So please, you seem eager, Emmanuel.
Well, actually, hello? Hello? I think you read my mind because I was kind of thinking on the contribution, because the department I work at, ASTM International, is the Global Cooperation Department. And this department was created actually to make this contribution, and it's really great to hear how much support do you feel, Rosario and Inacal, and I believe all the partners we have, the 127 partners around the world, also feel the same, because it is very difficult. I come from Nicaragua, for example. Well, now I live in the US, but in Nicaragua, when sometimes you don't have all the resources or all the people or the knowledge or the data to help you find the solutions that you desperately need. And that's why we are always proud to say that we are there for the countries and the people and the community that needs us. Our members, for example, do not make a big contribution to be part of ASTM. It's a very low-level barrier that they have, and they come and they are volunteering, and it's because all of us have that passion for helping the world work better and contributing to societal needs. And here is a clear example on how we are contributing. I was going to say another one related to plastic, because, for example, in the island or the small island developing states, we know the issue that they have also with plastics and all how they get affected with the climate when in a hurricane or any affection that they can have. They have these standards in place, and we have helping them, for example, create workshop where they are going to come together and discuss and evaluate, and we may present about our standards, but since they have the memorandum of understanding, they can adopt these standards, but also they can put their input to the international standard. They don't need to adopt the 100% of the text. They will identify those areas where they need a modification, and that is where the magic comes, because it is a solution that is to their local realities. Thank you.
So if I interpreted you right, so inclusion and engaging
equity
to get commitment to then get the movement going. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Would any of you like to comment on that as well? Kurt, please.
Yeah, my reflection is on the importance of convening a lot of different actors and the inclusion of a lot of different actors, and they're in two fronts. The first one is the need to communicate science in such a way as it is friendly and usable, no, and inclusive. No, the way we communicate science, the way we communicate in our evidence, can be inclusive or can be exclusive depending on how we do it. No, and it can be inclusive to in different ways. It can be inclusive because it is made to be understood by people of all kinds, but it can also be inclusive because it's friendly, no, or as opposed to conflictive, no. So the way you communicate brings people further together or brings them further apart, no, both from the sense of making it understandable and making it friendly. The other thing I wanted to say is in the Amazon, inclusivity is super important in terms of the people who live in the Amazon. No, I mean, we're in Belen right now, and the people of Belen have basically poured their hearts out into this event. No, so when we build standards, no, what do those standards look like if they are going to be inclusive for people like the people of Belen or like the indigenous communities of the Amazon? Some of the best standards, some of the standards that are most easily adopted, no, and are rigorous as well, are the ones that are done with inclusivity, no. So super important to keep that in mind when we talk about places like the Amazon.
Thank you, Kurt. Any of you, Rosario, Sakaya, would like to? Yeah, Sakaya, please.
I think there are two things that I would say as closing thoughts from my side. So one is, within the standards world, we have a language that is often mystical to the rest of the population, where we go on slurries of numbers, 14,090, 14,092, 9,001. And the general population does not understand that language when we talk about technical committees and when we talk about numbers. So it's really important, I think, with what my colleague said about inclusivity, the effectiveness of language. I'm going to go drive hard on that because that's something absolutely we need to do better with as technical experts. The second thing as a closing thought is when we think about whether it is the transition to net zero, whether we think it is the investment in water resilience or other projects. I got a friend who's trying to attack me. I think there's two critical steps where standards can make a difference. One is prioritize those elements that are the highest risk, where you're going to get the the best impact, and you get that from doing a risk assessment. So whether it's our generic risk assessment standard or whether it's specific to our climate adaptation risk, vulnerability and risk assessment, prioritize your investments well and be able to show to development banks or other financial agencies that you've done your due diligence and here's the best place to do your investments because you did the science and you did the economics behind it. And then the second aspect is once you get those funds have to be used well. And that's where quality management systems and management of execution risk becomes critical. And I think those are the two things that, especially with where we are as a society, where we're not hitting our targets and money is becoming even more difficult to obtain and countries are pulling back, that getting that efficiency on our capital is so critical, and standards can help.
Thank you, Sakaya. And while, exactly, I was just to say, talking about inclusivity, I think we should have an inclusive way of also letting the audience come in and have comments. So please, tell your name and what your organization, and then go ahead.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. We feel it's a very relevant.
Who are you and where you're from?
Yes, I will. I feel very relevant, so I wouldn't waste your time. My name is Sean Chen, founder CEO of a company called Heck Cloud Inc. Heck Cloud Inc. is a New York-based climate tech technology. We work with IBM extensively worldwide, developed a breakthrough technology, basically can generate a large amount of fresh water to reach climate resilient, and also bring a large amount of carbon removed from atmosphere in a sustainable way. No chemical, no damage. We've been prepared last year in a large scale field project in different geographies. We have one in the UAE, cover about 90% of the country, 65,000 square kilometers. Also have one in Panama, work with the environmental ministry to solving two problems. One's a canal because the climate change. Another one is the national parks where they're so dry and desert. So and agriculture. So we also working with an entity in Brazil for cover a large project area, about 4,000 square kilometers, about the Amazon. My question is this: I feel this is an excellent work in industry. I personally have a lot of experience, many years in the industry open standard on different industry, different markets. My question is that how can we would like to contribute in any significant way? So how can we contribute, or do you think this is a fit? What are you doing? Because this is the first time I was sitting in the meeting here. Yeah. That's my question. Yeah, and if so, then how? What's the process, and what's the way to get in and collaborate?
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
And for also explaining your area of operation and how what your ambitions are. I think this is why the panel is here. So please, Emmanuel, would you like to start?
Actually, you are making my job easier because at ASTM International, we welcome everyone to our table. You, doesn't matter where you are or where you come from, you can come to our technical tables. You are welcome to join, and actually, if you can put the next slide, please.
Manuel, could you...
you got it, okay.
The QR code.
So please fill out the form, and I'm gonna receive it directly. I'm gonna make sure we respond to you, and we get the communication going. That is the first step, and actually, I was going to close with this because we have these standards. We understand the importance and the value of the standards, but if you, the audience that is here, do not apply this standard, or if you do not come to these open tables, because we welcome the people, but if the people do not come to us, we cannot do much. If you don't use the standard cannot be applied by themselves. So that is very crucial and important that you take action starting from today, if it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Did you respond? But I would like to also have the other...
No, only the same message that Emmanuel told you is ISO. To participate in ISO technical committee here, we have the representative of Secretary of ISO, and you can contact to explore how do you contribute with your experience as an expert in different technologies, technical committee, in different aspects.
Thank you. So, yeah, we hand over the mic to you again, so please.
Thank you very much. It's clear. I just have a one-sentence comment. Personally, I have many years' experience. Create global industry open standard. I lead about 200 people. And so when you have a new technology, was not fitting the pigeonhole, you need to create a new open standard. It goes through all the process.
Thank you for that closing. So, anyone else in the audience who would like to address a question? Yeah, Manuel, please.
Hi, my name is Manuel. I work with the Stockholm International Water Institute. My question is a bit about, we heard throughout COP a little bit about standardization and also the benefits it could bring. So I wondered if you could just elaborate a bit on how we can use standardization and also collaboration to align particularly to sort of cross-scale work toward global goals. And I wonder if you have any views, it's still very much under discussion, but particularly about the global goal on adaptation and how standardization bodies, for example, could contribute to that.
Sakaya, I think that's aimed for you first. And
Yeah,
then
I think that's an excellent question. So when ISO develops its standards through its consensus process, they're actually voted on, so they're developed by technical experts from across different countries, and then they're voted on by each country. Each country has one vote to become an international standard. And so I think there's 2 or 3 things that we see happening. So the first thing is that because the ISO standards have been voted on by countries and are recognized as being an international standard, countries have more confidence in embedding these standards in legislation. So the greenhouse gas, our GHG quantification, but more importantly, our validation and verification standards and our competency requirements for bodies that are actually doing the measurement and accounting, those accreditation standards are being embedded in legislation. We see it in Canada, we see it in Europe, we see in India, we see it in multiple countries. So I think the first one is the basis for getting embedded into legislation. And then I think the second aspect, specifically around your question about adaptation, is having a rigorous process to be able to implement, I think, is really important. So the national adaptation plans, if you take a look at the way that the national adaptation plans, doesn't matter which country you're looking at, they're very high level and very aspirational, even if you've got sector-specific plans. When you actually get into the execution of what is my phased implementation of what I'm going to do, or municipalities and communities are often on the front lines of adaptation, they don't always have the tools that they need to actually develop those solutions. And so I think what we see with the power of national standards bodies, which exist in each country, is there's the ability to connect with municipal governments, with subnational governments, with policymakers to help use the ISO standards and that methodology, which has rigorously been approved by multiple countries, to be able to provide that roadmap for implementation. And I think that's what we're seeing. You know, it doesn't matter which COP we've been at this process for a long time, it's implementation that we're missing. And the standards provide the roadmap for actually implementing on those commitments, whether it's net zero, whether it's adaptation, whether it's financing. We need to actually get into the implementation phase, and that's where the standards play a role.
thank you, Sakaya. I would, yeah, Emmanuel, and then please, Rosario, if we would like to comment on that as well. Go ahead.
Talking about that, okay, I'm gonna put it in this way. At ASTM International, we leave politics aside, right? Because the most important is the technical aspect of the solution you are putting together. And the most important is that it's scientifically reliable and delivers the result it is promising. That is tested and proven, and most of the solutions are in the communities, are in the people, come from the producers, come from the users, and we don't block this type of issues because of politics, but we make sure they fulfill the rigorosity of the process. They also have a vote. There is one vote per member. If there is a company that is a member, they don't vote twice in the committee, right? So we have our own rules and regulations as well to approve the process and to go in alignment with the regulations in the policies. What we do is that there is government people involved as well, but they typically monitor the process. They see and they oversee that the solutions are actually what the people need. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. Please, Rosario.
I totally agree with my colleagues, but I would like to also add that it is that the challenge is that policymakers, the national standard body, and experts, the private sectors understand the same. This is very important because maybe we are talking about the standard and we are talking about in the very common language for us, but policymakers are understanding different things. So we need to have a very strong communication and to be able to match what is the commitment, what are we do with as a standard, and what the private sector want to do with that. Yeah, I think it's very important.
Thank you. Kurt, would you like to reflect on that?
So we invite you to join our technical committees and see the process, see how the standards come to life into the action, okay?
Thank you. Kurt, would you like to comment?
I'll just reiterate what I already said about keeping things simple, so that users can understand them and people that are not from the sector can understand them. And starting with the people who are in the landscape that we are working in. As you just said, the solutions, a lot of the solutions are already there. They are known by the people who live day to day in the places that we want to help keep healthy.
So we don't forget who we do this for. Thank you. So thank you for the question. Mindful of the time, we have about 5 minutes left. Is there any other question in the audience? Yeah, let's go.
Just a quick comment on your question. So the first thing is that why do we need a standard? What's the purpose? Well, the purpose standard is that for the quickest adaptation and the minimum harm. So before that, then any solution or any technology looking for a standard, they have to solve the problem. If it doesn't solve the problem, there's no need. But after solve the problem, you have to consider everybody's stakeholders. So that's why you said every country has a vote because they have their specific concerns. So when you adopted all the concerns, then you can have a quickest adaptation. So economically, you will achieve the maximum benefits because everybody using the same. Yeah, it's replaceable, it's easily deployable, you have a easily trainable, maintainable. I think that's the comment for the any technology seeking or standard bodies, and also most importantly for the standard committee or working groups. Remember that, and the standard is not red tape. The standard is the help shape, but the first thing the technology has to work. What we see mostly is that the new technology it's a baby born. It works, but a lot of criticism. People don't know what it's going to look like when they grow up. Well, that's exactly the standard committee should be very careful on this stage. Don't kill the baby, but encourage and connect them, make them work faster in the field, then keep their mission in mind. This way is the most effective way. You can find the technology, make it to the world, and quickest mostly benefits all the country members. That's my comment.
Thank you for that wise comment. And yeah, Emmanuel,
just to add is that we like to put it in this way. We help accelerating technology deployment and innovation.
Sounds like raising a child.
Can I just add a comment? So there's one standard that ISO has that not a lot of people know that it exists. You probably know that it exists, Rosa, but it's on environmental technology verification. So it was developed specifically with the understanding that there's going to be new technologies that are developed, that the industry is coming up with the innovation, but government agencies or other stakeholders may not actually understand or have had exposure to the technology before. So the Environmental Technology Verification Standard was specifically designed to help provide a tool for government agencies or for organizations that wanted to take a look at a new innovative project and actually do an assessment and take that technology through the process of verifying that are the claims that a business is making, are those actually valid? So not a lot of people know about that standard, but we do have one specifically on that is that in your particular case you may be interested in looking at.
Adding a little bit in terms of sustainable aviation fuels, for example, we have a similar standard as well. So they exist.
Thank you all. So I will try to wrap this up. Kurt, you said communicate science. Sakaya, translate science into economic numbers. So they two work together. And we also heard about the importance of being inclusive, also recognizing all stakeholders, talking a little bit and mentioning the indigenous groups outside our doors here, and that quality management systems needs to also be in the part of the solutions. So with that, if I would wrap this up, I would say that science-based standards and research applications are effective tools to translate climate goals into practical and measurable actions for water management and resilience. Do you agree? Thank you.
Fully agree.
Totally agree. Collaboration between governments, the private sector, and standardization bodies accelerates the implementation of the NDCs and NAPs. That I think is clear. Partnerships ensures an inclusive, scalable solution for climate adaptations in water systems and strengthening the capacity. You all nod, so I'm just keep going here. And standards based in science and research promote transparency, consistency, and innovation across sectors, enabling the shared progress towards the SDGs. So finally, defining the system boundaries and assessing climate vulnerabilities through the structured risk management, you talked about risk, enables decision makers to identify critical intervention points and prioritize the cost-effective measures that strengthen water resilience and support long-term adaptation goals. So do we have a conclusion on that? Cool.
Can we conclude that we have a new expert in the standard?
I've just become an expert thanks to you. So thank you for that. And thank you for your dear panel. We are working under some conditions here with, I think it's a bit over 30 degrees. You've been brilliant. I got some water during this. Thank you. And thank you, panel. And thank you, audience, for bringing also the questions. And I would like to round up with a big applaud. Thank you all.
Thank you, Thomas, also for moderating the session and for the Water Pavilion as well for hosting us here today.
Thank you.